Do you have a two-sided die?
I have a 20-sided die.
And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 36. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite music artists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my good friend...
Matt Runquist. Hey, Travis, how you doing? This week, I watched the movie Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and you listened to folk rock crooner Sufjan Stevens.
Yes, I did indeed. I was wondering if you were going to give the subtitle to Dungeons and Dragons because, as I discovered after watching it, this is actually like the fourth Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there, and of course, there's the television show from the 80s as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But before we do that, how the heck are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good. I've been sick all week, as you know, from my slightly lowered voice.
I can still hear it a little bit.
Yeah, I've got that radio thing going on again, but it was a pretty good week for me. Got to do a little hiking today with the dogs, which is always fun, and I harvested my plum tree this week, so I have plum trees in my front yard, and I planted them 3 years ago, which means this year I had a crop of beautiful, beautiful purple plums, and I brought that in, and then yesterday I made plum jam for the very first time, and it tastes delicious. Now, I don't know if you've ever made jam, but there is so much sugar in it. Like, you take 6 cups of like processed plums, like you pit them and you grind them up, right? You take 6 cups of processed plums and then add to it 8 cups of sugar.
That's crazy,
Travis. It is insane. You just dump it into this like boiling mixture and it just goes whoosh, and it just,
yes.
I mean, it's very impressive. It disappears, but it's also like, there's part of you that's like, I'm doing something that's very, very bad for myself right now.
Yeah, I did make jam a lot with my mom. We would make strawberry jam and strawberry rhubarb jam and different jams of different types. So I am familiar with all the sugar. I do wonder, because when I look at the jams at the store, like the Kirkland jam that they sell at Costco, which is like preserves actually, has about half the sugar as like Smucker's. And I wonder if that is just Smucker's, feeding our sugar addiction as Americans, or if there really is that much leeway in...
Yeah, I think there really is that much leeway in how much sugar that you add. I know that I also add pectin, at least for
well, that's the jelly part, yeah.
The part that helps it set up and be jelly, yeah. But I think there is just a fair amount of leeway. Yeah. So anyways, so I did that, and that was really fun. And then the other big news that I have is related to the music project, Panko Stankhole. So I have been diligently working on a new song for Panko Stankhole. So no more with the one a week thing. So this is something I spent some time on. And this is actually a cover song of a song that my college band, Lotus Dinner, had done. I decided to re-record it with some new technology, and a friend of mine did a nice new bass line for it. It's going to be releasing on September 24th. It's called War. You might get an advance copy of it. But also on September 24th, there's going to be a Battle of the Bands here in Milwaukee that I think Panko Stankhole is going to participate in. And releasing a song, performing my first live show, which it's not going to be a full band. It's just going to be me with a guitar, and then my wife will come up and sing a song or two.
I am so excited about that.
So I'm excited about all of that. I'm like sending the song out to local press to try to get a little bit more engagement than I had been with the Panko Stankhole project. And Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Wow, that's great. I hope you have some audio clips that you'll be able to play for us
Yeah,
when
sure.
you
I
come
can.
back when you're done with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
well,
be
it's
fun.
it's it's actually ready to go. So maybe next week I'll drop a little, 15-second teaser or something in.
All
So
right. Wow, man, that's awesome. Congratulations.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, I hope we do get to hear about a little bit about that. Anything else exciting?
No, that's it for me. What have you got this week, Travis?
Not a whole heck of a lot, to be honest. Life has been pretty average. It's been hot, just kind of dealing with the heat and being with Coco. I have been exercising more these last few weeks because I got rid of that plantar fasciitis, and so I have been doing my gym class, and I have been doing I played a full day of ultimate frisbee yesterday, which was crazy because it was like 95 degrees, and we start at about noon, and
Oh
so
gosh.
yeah, it's not like we start early to kind of beat the heat, which is weird and ridiculous, but I managed to play the whole game and feel pretty good. A little, sore in my feet and stuff like that, but nothing that's not
Well,
unusual.
and that must be really difficult now that you're like 29 or whatever it is. It's got
Yeah,
to be.
the ripe old age
You're a little
of
older.
46 here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do feel like the old guy, but it is not a group of young guys. Like we are kind of all, lower middle-aged guys.
Do young
And
people even know what Ultimate is anymore? I feel like that was a big
do you
sport.
think it's a passé thing? I don't think so. We do have young people that play with us.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
you
think
would know
it's.
more than me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think ultimate frisbee is only increasing in its relevance rather than decreasing. So, but that's a good question. I guess I don't know for sure. There are professional ultimate frisbee leagues, or there is
Yeah.
a
I know that
league.
recreationally, pickleball is taking over the earth right now. So,
Yeah, but pickleball is an old people's sport. I feel like I
yeah,
don't
right.
know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Just like if you don't have enough energy for tennis, play pickleball. Oh, I played tennis again for the first time last weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned
My
it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I hurt my shoulder a little bit doing it. So maybe I do. Maybe I should pick up some pickleball and find a little court nearby. Anyway, but that's pretty much it. I've been continuing to plan for the Time Wrecked web series. We had auditions, and we got all the auditions back this week, and I'm pretty
That's
happy.
so weird. I
with the
didn't get
cast.
I didn't get my call about
Once
the
again,
submitting a
once
tape
again,
or
you were snubbed
anything.
by the audition committee.
Yeah,
Ah,
what happened there? That's crazy.
I don't know.
Huh.
I'll have to talk to them about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I promise I'll put my foot down. But yeah, but it was. I did get back to work as well for a day on Friday, and then we're gonna do 2 days this coming week. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with the show, like if we're going to try to work without writers or what. But it's nice to have a couple days of work at the very least, and lets my unemployment like kind of stretch out a bit until
Sure.
work does resume for reals.
Yeah.
And but yeah, other than that, just doing my thing.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
Let's say we get into the meat of
Get
this.
into
I
the
am
meat.
Oh man, I am interested about these topics that we have today because my opinions on them are about as diverse as I have ever had.
You mean like you are
not gonna
ambivalent
tell you what
about
I
them
mean.
both?
I'm not
Oh,
gonna tell you what I mean.
I'm actually
You'll find
curious
out.
what that means because
Yeah.
yeah.
You'll find
Okay.
out, my friend. But where would you like to start?
Well, Travis, I don't know what to do first, but in honor of our movie choice, I think we should let the D20 decide. So I
Oh
have
my
here
goodness.
a 20-sided die authentically used in an authentic D&D game.
That's awesome. So what are we gonna do? Like ups and downs, or odds and evens, or
I
what?
would say odds and evens. So
Okay,
odds,
so-
we'll do the movie first.
Okay.
Evens, we'll do the music first. Are you ready?
All right. Yes, the
okay.
fates still
Here we
choose
go.
for us.
It is a 2. Even.
It's two. Even. So we're doing music
The
first.
music first. We're doing
All right. Well then, Matt, tell us about Sufjan Stevens.
Sufjan. The J
Sufjan.
is
Okay.
the J. It's not. I was gonna say the J is silent, but it's really not silent. It's a Y.
It's a
Um,
Y. Yeah.
the
Sufjan
J is a
Stevens.
Y.
That's a great
Uh,
name. I do like that name.
yeah, Sufjan Stevens is an indie rocker who came into sort of a folk indie. I don't know what to call him. Anyways, he came into popularity in the late '90s. He is very kind of, I would say he's very soft spoken. Like, this is always pretty gentle music most of the time. But anyways, early on in his career, he decided that he was going to make an album, a theme album about every single U.S. state. He did one about his home state of Michigan, and then he did an album about Illinois, and then he gave up. But, oh, go ahead.
Wait, before you go, why did he choose Illinois? Was that his adopted state? Like, did he move to Illinois?
I think he was just working his way around. I think he
Okay.
felt like there was a lot of material to.
Illinois and Michigan aren't connected, are they?
I think you're going to have to interview Sufjan Stevens to find out the answer to this
I would
question.
love to. I would love to.
They are not, in fact, connected because Indiana gets in the way.
Right.
But-
yeah.
Anyways, so the album Illinois was very, very good. I really, really like it. It's not quite on my favorite albums list, but it's pretty close. I made a playlist for you of probably 3/4 of the songs from that album. I cut out there's a lot of interstitial music that he makes, and even some of these songs have a sort of a floaty quality to them that is like transitioning you from one place to another. But anyways, I really like this music. A lot of it is very pretty, even when he's singing about very serious subject matter, like he does. There's a song about John Wayne Gacy, and there's other serious topics, but he's got a really beautiful voice, and when like a lot of times this music is a little atmospheric, but when he does kick in with like the melodies, they're really good melodies too. I really dig him. So what did you think? I got to admit, this is another one where I have a hard time predicting your reaction.
Yeah. This was a very interesting experience for me listening to this. So I will say the first moment where I was on a walk with Coco, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start this playlist right now. And I had been listening to podcasts, and as is my wont, I generally don't listen to music when I'm on my headphones. I listen to NPR podcasts or Science Friday, or I guess that's NPR technically. But I listen to talky things, and I put this music on, and the first second or the first couple of notes or whatever, I don't know what it was, but I had this flush of like tingliness from my ears all the way through my body, and it was a very interesting experience, pleasurable. And I think that what I ended up equating this guy's singing to is his singing is gentle. His singing is kind. It's loving almost. He sings the way I want to be touched, you know?
All right.
And I like to be touched in slow, even strokes, and that's how he sings. He sings in slow, even strokes. He never gets loud. He never belts a note. He never, his melodies are there, right? And he has them. His voice is clean and pure and lacks any of the distortion that I tend to not like. But his actual singing is clean, and he doesn't do vibrato. It's just super gentle. And the other the metaphor that I came up with was what if PBS was a music label? This guy would be on it. Like it almost felt like even the instrumentals and stuff. It felt like an evolution of the kind of music you might hear in a children's show like Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
That
or
is
something.
actually that's a really good observation. I've never thought of that, but that is a perfect way to describe what Sufjan Stevens does.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Emotionally, I guess, on a kind of a very deep, like, synapses level, I enjoyed the experience of listening to this guy. I did get a little bored as I went through my first listen,
Hmm.
and found that I was zoning out a little bit and kind of just experiencing it rather
Hmm.
than listening, which we've talked about before, where artists have a similar kind of style, a similar genre that they have for their whole album. It's not like listening to, say, Graceland, where each song kind of is its own story and almost its own genre. Where this is very similar. Now, it had more variety than the one we talked about a couple weeks ago, where
Hmm.
I had that issue where every song was sad.
Hmm.
This is not that. Songs are not sad. They're not even dour. There's a lot of energy, and some of the instrumentals are really fun. And the other thing, on my second time through, what I realize is this is the exact type of music, and this might not be a good analogy for you, but because it's based in movies, but like this is the music you would hear in the trailer of a Spike Jonze movie, like
Okay.
Where the Wild Things Are, or Her, or
Hmm.
this is the kind of, like, it's got that kind of quirky, almost new age, but like fun and fun and gentle. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so um, I would love to. I feel like this guy is probably someone I would like to know, and like I
Hmm.
feel like he sings like he'd be a good boyfriend.
All
You know,
right. All right.
so I don't know. Maybe I'd put him on my boyfriend mix, unless he wanted to be my boyfriend, and then
Yeah.
I was making the mix for him. Then obviously I wouldn't put his own music on the mix. That would be
No.
creepy, right?
I
Right?
think probably.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you pretended not to know who he was.
Sure, I suppose that'd be an interesting thing. Like, just like I just meet this guy and like just randomly say,
It's
"Here's my."
it's so weird that you have the same first name as this guy, this musician I really love.
Yeah, and that's assuming I don't know his last name too at this point. By
Right.
the time I
Right.
make a mixtape for him, okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I enjoyed it. I think that this is the type of thing I would like more. I did listen to it two times through, and
Hmm.
I feel like this is the type of music that I would absolutely enjoy whenever it happened to come on.
Hmm.
I'm not sure I would put it on, but I also might like it more and more the more I listen to it.
Yeah, this is an album that I do I have that same experience with it. I like it more the more I hear it. It is
Hmm.
something that it kind of reveals itself to you over time, and that's a recurring theme of the podcast. But this one especially because you're right. It, it's funny, the orchestrations are so lush and they are
Hmm.
different from one another, but because they're so like they're filling up all the musical space,
Yes.
they can kind of seem samey, right? Even if they're
Yeah.
filling up all the musical space in
Well,
different
because he's
ways.
pretty the same. Like, he's very the same. The music behind him, I think, differs fairly
Yeah.
well between
Yeah.
from song to song.
Yeah.
He's the connective tissue, uh,
Hmm.
eh, for good and maybe for bad, from a varietal standpoint.
Well, so interestingly, a lot of what I eliminated from your playlist are sort of interstitial type songs that don't have him on them at all, or
Oh,
are like, so you know that there's pretty extensive use of backing vocals in this, right? There's
some,
like
yeah, yeah,
a little choir, is what it sounds like. I don't know how many people are in it, right? But
right.
there's a lot of like sort of choral type backing vocals on this. And there's a few of those interstitial tracks that kind of have that sort of atmospheric type things. And I eliminated those because I thought you maybe wouldn't have the patience to get through them. But
Okay.
as always, I do prove to be a pretty poor judge of what types of things you're going to like and what types of things you're not, which is another way of saying, I listened to the first couple of tracks this week and I was like, gosh, is this a misfire? Is Travis going to hate me for this? And so I'm really happy and intrigued to hear that you largely enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I do appreciate you removing some of the stuff that might have bored me because that was maybe my biggest complaint about this is that I felt unengaged with the music in a way. I felt that the music was kind of washing over me in a way, which is fine. That's enjoyable. I tend to like more engaging music, but that was a good move on your part for sure. Yeah.
Now, did you catch the song about the Man of Steel?
I did. I noted while I was listening to it that it was about Superman. I didn't go and look at the lyrics.
You're a Superman fan, though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's my first and greatest hero. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did think that was interesting. I'm not sure what. Do you know what Superman has to do with Illinois?
I don't. That's part of the problem. Is other than Metropolis might be based on Chicago as a city because Metropolis is kind of in the Midwest. Kansas is nearby, and so that makes sense that Metropolis might be Chicago.
Okay.
So, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's funny because while I was listening to it, you had mentioned that last week, and I remember in my head going, "What does that have to do? What does Superman have to do with Illinois? Like, are the creators from Illinois somewhere? Maybe I didn't look into it." Producer, hello, producer. We need some information here. Oh, we need a producer.
We do need a producer. That's a really good idea. We should get one of those.
We should definitely get one of those. Yeah. So that being said, all that, I did enjoy it. I think that my rating is not going to be as high as you might be anticipating given what I've said thus far. But whatever it is, it's going to be with the caveat that there's room for improvement.
Well, Travis, I used my Google Foo. There is a town in Illinois named Metropolis, and they have declared themselves the home of Superman.
Okay,
yes,
that makes sense.
So that's what it's
now
about.
Now that you say that, it does ring a bell, and I remember that there was a documentary about the Superman of Hollywood Boulevard and how he went to Metropolis, Illinois once to a convention. They have a Superman convention. Of course they do.
All right. Cool.
So,
of course they do.
But
so anyways, I really love the song Chicago as well. I don't know if that stood out for you, but
it did. Yep.
Historically in my life, I drive through Chicago on a semi-regular basis because I live 90 miles away, and anytime I'm going east or south, I go through Chicago. And for some reason, unintentionally, this song often comes up on my playlist when I'm driving through Chicago. And it does give you this sort of it makes me like the town Chicago more than I ordinarily do. Because
sure.
Like a lot of people in Milwaukee, we have a little bit of little brother syndrome about Chicago. Everybody always talks about Chicago and it's bigger and it's better and blah, blah, blah. Right. But when I hear this song, I understand what people like about Chicago. So I did want to call that out.
Yeah, Chicago is a town I like, and it's got a lot of personality. And but this song, it did strike me, and I remember when I was listening to it, it was one of those moments where I had to pull out my phone, and so I could say, "Oh, what song is this? Which song is this?" So I can remember to note that this was a really good song. So you're absolutely right. And the following track, which was Casimir Pulaski Day. I also remember liking. I can't remember why off the top of my head, but I did also do that same thing where I had to pull out my phone and be like, "Oh, what's this song?" And it's different. But I enjoyed. So there were highlights for sure of this album, and nothing that I didn't like. There's an important note. There was nothing that I disliked from this playlist.
There was no first track off of Yaysayer for you on this one.
Yeah, no, none of that. Good memory. Good callback. Yes, no, none of that. In fact, like it starts off pretty strong, and it hooked me. Well, there we go. With first song syndrome has not been in part of this album. So, is this the first song of the actual album too, or just this playlist?
Uh, Gosh, I don't know.
Oh, well, and also, now on the album name on YouTube is Illinois, the state. The album
Yeah.
name on the cover of the album is Illinois with an
Yes.
E at the end.
Yes.
So which is it? I mean, I would assume that it's the album art is correct. Yeah.
The album name is Illinois.
Huh.
Yeah, I know. Um, it's it's a joke, basically.
It
It's
is a
come on,
joke
feel
because
the Illinois.
yeah.
The other thing that I would point out about this album cover is that this is not the original album cover where you see the three balloons flying across above the skyline. That
Yeah.
used to be Superman, and
Oh.
they definitely got a cease and desist, and
Oh, that's
had
funny.
to reissue the album with a different
Well,
cover.
that's interesting because did they have the right to use the image of the erstwhile Sears Tower or whatever it's called now, or the John Hancock
Yeah,
building
as far as I know, you can use buildings without permission
on
on art
works
or
of
whatever.
works
Yeah,
of profit? Okay, okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, good to know. Good to know. I have some U.S. bank building plans. Then, that's dumb. That's the best building in Los Angeles, the tallest building in Los Angeles. That doesn't make it the best, but it's not about the size of your
US
building.
Bank,
It's
the U.S. Bank building is also the tallest building in Milwaukee, actually.
is
So,
it really?
yeah.
That's interesting. I actually like the U.S. Bank building design here in L.A. It's pretty cool. And just a complete tangent. There is a South Korean building that went up. Like I don't know what it is, but it was built by South Korea or something. And they put a spire on top of it, and the spire makes it taller than the U.S. Bank building. And so they claim that that building is the tallest building west of the Mississippi now, but it is clearly not. Like if you stand off to the side and look at them, the building itself is much lower, and it honestly makes me mad every time I look at it because I'm like, you're lying. You're using.
I agree with you, Travis, but historically, spires are included in the height of the building.
Well, sure,
That's
but U.S. Bank building has a flat top, and so there is no reason they couldn't just pop a spire on there and
they
call it
should
the
do
tallest.
that. They should
They
do
really
that,
should.
then. They should.
You know what? They
I'm
actually
gonna
should.
call my congressman on Monday
There you
and
go.
tell him to put a spire
I have
on the
two
US
missions
Bank
now.
building.
Get a dog park in my in the park that's by my house, and put a spire on the U.S. Bank building in
Yeah,
Los
let's do
Angeles. All right.
All right, we should rate this.
Okay. Yeah. So, oof. You know what? I was thinking of 5 because right now I'm feeling kind of like this average energy off this album. But you know what? Nah, I'm gonna bump it up to a 6. It was better than average for sure, and I will also throw in that caveat that it could get better in my mind on future listenings.
All right. All right. Very cool. Very cool. Well, for me, this one is an 8. I really like it. It's one of, I'm always happy to hear it. It never really drops out of my rotation. Yeah, I love it. So,
Yeah, I think if I had a rotation, it would probably make it into it. Yeah, I could see that.
Travis, why don't you tell me about the movie?
All right, well, this is a movie that is fairly recent, which is not something we do a lot of. But I wanted you to watch the movie Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, which is a movie that came out this year. It's a fantasy film based on the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. It stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Regina Page, who is from the Netflix show Bridgerton. It's Justice Smith, who was in the he was in the Detective Pikachu movie, Sophia Lillis, who was in the It movies, and of course Hugh Grant, who was in the Hugh Grant movies. And I had no interest in seeing this movie, really, even though I like, genre stuff. But the reviews when it came out were surprisingly uniformly positive. And so at some point, when it came out on streaming several months ago on like Paramount Plus, I was like, sure, I'll watch it. And I found myself absolutely delighted. And so I was waiting for it to come out on a more wide streaming service, and it is now available on Prime Video. And so I gave it to you. Now, I don't know what to say about this movie other than it is just it combines really good effects. So one of the problems with the last Dungeons and Dragons movie that I ever saw, which was from the year 2000, which was I mean, very dated with the special effects. Its story was so kind of like simple. There was no self-awareness, or it took itself very self-seriously. This one is funny. It's a comedy, but it's not a parody, which is a very interesting line to cross, I think. It just is funny. Very similar to, I think, the Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle movie that we watched. Like, it's not a parody of anything. It just happens to be funny. And I really like this trend on movies. So this is, weirdly enough, the second movie we've rated very recently based on a game. So like Mattel owns Barbie, Hasbro owns Dungeons and Dragons, which I thought was very interesting to note. What did you think? I'm curious.
Well, first of all, I want to point out that Dungeons and Dragons originated here in Wisconsin, just 50 or 60 miles away from the place where I'm sitting right now.
Really? Gary Gygax is from Wisconsin?
He's from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Yes, he is.
I did not know that.
Yes, and he regularly ran Dungeons and Dragons games in his home into the 2000s. I know people that have played Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax.
Wow, that is kind of amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So, I really liked this movie a lot. I 100% agree with you that it is a comedy that is also an adventure. And yeah, I think it shares a lot of DNA with Jumanji. I would say the acting is probably a little better in this. There are times when Chris Pine's main character gets like really loosey-goosey, and you're like, oh man, this might be too much. But I was thinking about this, and what the core truth of this movie is that, and it never gives this game away, but the core truth of this is that is often what a Dungeons and Dragons gaming session is like. You got to remember, for those of you who have never played Dungeons and Dragons, the dungeon master comes up with like a world and a story within that world that they're trying to tell, but the players have total freedom to try to do what they want to do, and often they will do things that the dungeon master doesn't expect. So I'm thinking specifically of the sequence where he and the Michelle Rodriguez character are escaping from the tribunal, and they shove a Birdman out the window and ride him to the ground safely. That is very true to Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I'm sure that the dungeon master for that scene never would have expected them to do that, but the game's rules allow you to be like, you know what? We're gonna just hold on to the Birdman and hope, right? And, and
then you roll, and if you roll high enough,
if you roll high enough, so there's a real core truth to that sort of behavior that's kind of like out of left field, and maybe it's a little funny, but it's also trying to achieve its goals, that I really, really loved. Because here's the thing, this movie works without knowing any of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to have played Dungeons and Dragons to understand the references or rather, you don't need to understand the references to enjoy the movie.
They feed you most of the information you need to know.
The
pretty
information
seamlessly.
that you need to know is there in the movie, and then there are lots of, we call them Easter eggs, but honestly, they're just world building elements that are familiar to people who have played Dungeons and Dragons and that
Yep.
just wash right over people who haven't played Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, the
And I
detail for
the
fans is
the
crazy.
detail is really really good for people who are Dungeons and Dragons fans, but you don't need that to enjoy this movie, which is just like a fun, adventurous romp with a little core of emotional center. The relationship between the Chris Pine character and his daughter is, and between Michelle Rodriguez and Chris Pine's daughter
Yeah.
is fantastic. It's really well handled. They're a little family. It's really good. Really,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So you know
love
what's
that.
funny is that Chris Pine is probably my second favorite Chris for like that I like. You know, I'm a big fan of Chris Evans I think like I find him sexier and more appealing. But I do think that Chris Pine is maybe my favorite from an acting point of view. I think he has better range. And you when you point out that his character gets a little like loosey goosey, he also flips and has moments of real introspection and real genuine emotion. And there is a point at the end of the movie where I like kind of at the after the climax when you have the cost of victory, and I cried
Hmm.
and I found myself very moved by it, genuinely. And I thought that that was very unexpected for me, especially in a movie that up until that point I had laughed out loud
Hmm.
several times.
Yeah.
I loved the jokes. I love the jokes with the raising of the corpses to ask them 5 questions.
Hmm.
I thought that that was very funny.
Yeah,
Um,
and it was broad humor, but it wasn't like overplayed, right?
Yeah, although I do think that the final joke there I didn't love. Like I feel like they stretched that in order to get a joke and made
Yeah.
it a place that was unreal. Like
Yeah.
I feel like it wouldn't have been hard for them to make sure that they had actually asked 5 questions of that last corpse. That's a little thing, but ultimately they didn't. I didn't find that they really did that much where they pushed themselves to push for a joke rather than just have things that felt like organic. I never knew that I needed a fat dragon in my life until I experienced this movie, and it is maybe my favorite thing of the year. To, to see like a fat roly poly dragon who there's a scene in which the dragon like overreaches for something and literally rolls over on its back and does a full barrel roll. And it's the least graceful thing you've ever seen a dragon do, but you've absolutely seen a fat dog do it or something in your
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
And it is I loved it so much. And that was a great moment for me too. So
Yeah, that was really really funny.
yeah, the acting all around was also great. Michelle Rodriguez was fantastic. Reggie Jean Page, who is he played the kind of paladin character that they encounter,
Yeah.
who is
Hmm.
like the un unassailable, perfect like
Hmm.
person. Like he
Yeah.
does everything that he needs to do, and he's everybody loves him, and he's successful in everything that he tries. And but I loved, and he kind of that character Zank kind of comes in the story and then goes out of the story after he's kind of used his usefulness. He
Hmm.
doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like he's just there to solve a problem. He feels like he's necessary, but he
Hmm.
also doesn't stay past his welcome.
Yeah.
You know.
Hmm.
And I also like that
Yeah.
they kind of wrote him a story that fits with the rest of the backstory. It's all kind of entwined very well story wise.
Yeah, I would say the writing on this is really that whoever did it really knocked it out of the park. This does not have, too many cook syndrome or anything. It's a
Yeah,
really
no.
tight story. Everything fits together. It gives you the information that you need. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. Um, I do
I'll say
want to,
that it
yeah.
was written and directed by a pair, Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, and then Michael Gillio has a screenplay credit as well. So
Okay. Yeah. So it's probably like an original, one original script and then a massaging. Um, I did want to call out the special effects because you mentioned it earlier, and this is absolutely the type of movie where inconsistent or bad special effects can really
hmm
throw you out of the movie,
hmm
and it's all really really good. There's a gelatinous ooze in this, and it's funny. So, gelatinous cube. Sorry,
I was gonna
in
say
this.
that's the box, right? Okay.
Yeah, the gelatinous cube in this, and it's really great because this is a classic Dungeons and Dragons monster, and hilariously, it's always 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet. Like
Oh.
that's the definition of this monster is that it's a 10 foot. And um, the way they conceive it and show it to you and show what it's capable of is so cool. The way that it like dissolves people as it's inside of them, but it's the way it interacts with the characters are on screen, it all really plays really really well in a way that doesn't look fake and doesn't take you out of the story. So there's many many examples of that, and there's a bunch of like Dungeons and Dragons specific type monsters in here. The owl bear obviously is another one.
Loved the owlbear.
Yeah, and there's a I can't remember the name of the psycho cat thing that chases everybody through the labyrinth, but Displacer Beast. That's another Dungeons and Dragons specific
Yep, and the
monster.
traps, the treasures that are actually traps.
The mimics, yeah.
The mimics,
Yeah.
yeah. They in that whole sequence where they're in the games at the end with all the mazes and the displacement beasts. There is a really interesting Easter egg, I guess, that they took the cartoon characters from the Saturday morning Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which was early '80s.
That's who that other party was. Okay.
Yeah, it was them as people. The only thing is that the kid who was the barbarian is not a kid. He's a weird old looking barbarian. But yeah, that was that team with the wizard and the mystic and all that. So that was a fun little Easter
Yeah,
egg.
that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a third team in the maze, and every one of that team member, we see them get killed as a way to show how dangerous the maze is. And so they've got the two teams that are successful, which are both of our hero teams that we love, and then this third team that one by one gets killed.
They're
So,
basically red shirts, yeah.
they are. I want to give a shout to Hugh Grant in this because he was game to play, which I really appreciate when kind of veteran actors are just down to have fun, and his smarminess. It's funny. Hugh Grant's charm has kind of parlayed well into an older age smarminess
Yeah.
that I love to see.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's great. It was so much fun here. And,
Yeah, I think he knows what he's good at, and you're absolutely right that it's funny. He's not really doing anything different than he's ever done, but because of the way that he is older and the world has changed, that is, we see it with sort of a new lens, and it works in this story, and he really delivers what this story needs, which is someone who is believably on their side and believably not. Yeah, it's really really good stuff.
yeah. I this is going to be one of those movies that I can watch again over the years. I think for a long time, and I imagine there's probably going to be a sequel. There's no reason there shouldn't be. I would very much like to see these characters again.
Yeah, I think, as long as the story brings it. I mean, because let's be honest, the reason this is good is because the story is there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And as long as they make sure that there's a story to tell, but that's one of the nice things about this property as or as an origin story. Like you've got yourself a bit of content already built into it. Like all these stories are there to draw on for inspiration for a good story. And then what they've got is these well-crafted characters that they just can put into these situations and do these kind of quests and whatnot. So
Almost like a D&D gaming session around the table every Sunday.
exactly. So I don't know. So the box office on this one was, according to Wikipedia, it's 208 million off of a $150 million budget. It seems really low for as good as word of mouth as this movie had when it was in theaters. It seems like a shame that it didn't make a little more money.
I mean, aren't box offices in general, like Barbie and Oppenheimer, X those, like, aren't box offices in general down quite a bit these days?
Well, there was a whole thing where, like, getting people back into the movies this year was, people were feeling that that was kind of a success. And, like, you also had movies like, Top Gun and stuff like that. So, but this is a movie that came out in March, at the end of March, which is not, it's not a summer movie. It's not a movie that it's not a time when you put movies out that you have faith in, which seems weird, unless they were just trying to avoid the summer movie glut.
Yeah, I think that might be it. And I would say that the franchise has a mixed track record at best. It's nice that they put all these resources behind the filming of the movie, but I think there's probably a fair amount of trepidation of, are people going to go see a Dungeons and Dragons movie?
That's very fair. Although, I mean, you've got a star like Chris Pine, who is, maybe he's not a box office draw, but he's certainly a well-known name. So maybe that was their problem, is that they just didn't trust the movie, and which is a shame because I thought it was fantastic. You want to give it a rating, or do you have any more to say about it?
I absolutely would love to give it a rating. This is a very, very good one for me. I initially wrote down 8 for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with 8. I really, really liked it. I can't think of what I would change about it. But I also, I don't think it quite reaches that, like, rarefied 9 or 10 for me,
Yeah,
like,
no,
there
I do
are,
get it.
I think I'm a little bit sensitive to, like, the idea that, oh, well, we are just, like, saying names that you recognize, and it pings that little thing in your brain, and you go, oh yeah, dopamine hit. I know that name, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't actually, translate to good movies. So I'm a little hesitant to give it too high of a score.
But I'll say also that there have been a lot of instances, Star Wars, a lot of that nostalgia mining in movies lately that has not been very successful, and I'll give this movie props for being a good movie, along with those kind of
Sure. Absolutely.
What's the word I'm looking for? Machinations?
Sure.
Manipulations?
We'll go with that. Ooh, I like manipulations, yeah.
Yeah, so, but that being said, I also rated it as an 8 on IMDb, and I think I don't know why not a 9, because this movie, I mean, ultimately gave me a lot of joy. This is like on par with, maybe not on par, but like the amount of joy that I get from Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, which is a sci-fi, kind of movie, but has a lot of special effects and comedy. This feels very similar to me. The only thing is maybe there were a couple of jokes that felt that they could have been massaged or done better. I'll stay with my 8. Sure, that's good. It's a good rating. So I don't know why I'd be complaining about it. So
all right,
if we were on a 5-star rating, that would be a 4.
That would be a 4. Yeah.
So
all right,
feel good about that, D&D.
Well, Travis, what do you have for me next week?
Oh, me first. I am going to give you the movie Prey, which is a Hulu original. I'm guessing you haven't seen it yet.
I have not seen it yet.
Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it.
Okay, do you know what it is?
It's a Predator movie.
Oh,
where he's fighting against a Native American woman. That's all I know.
Well, I was kind of hoping you didn't know that and that it would be revealed to you, but yes. This is in episode 18 we had you watch Predator and you liked it. And so now there have been many sequels and crossovers and spin-offs over the years, none of which have really been very good. But I will tell you that I was very pleasantly surprised by Prey, which was a Hulu original. It never got a theatrical release, but all I'll say about it is I think it deserved one. It's on Hulu, and we'll talk about it next week. What do you got for
All
me?
right, cool. What I have for you, I'm doing something a little bit different than what I usually do. I have a band called The Beths. I'm not even going to ask you if you've heard of The Beths because I know you haven't.
Well, that's
Because I
presumptuous.
because I had barely heard of The Beths, but they've come across my transom a couple of times recently, and I've really been digging them quite a bit. And I've been wanting to get a little more recent music on the podcast. So first of all, the first thing you need to know about the Beths is that they're from New Zealand, and so it's actually the Biths. We're the Biths.
Oh, I love the bits.
The Biths.
Oh, I love you, Biff.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So you now know everything you need to know about them, which is that they're from New Zealand. No, this is an indie rock band fronted by a woman named Elizabeth Stokes. They are a four-piece. They met in college a few years ago. They had their first album in 2018. Last year, they released the album Expert in a Dying Field. I really, really dig it, and so I've assigned it to you for next week.
All right. Well, I look forward to experiencing it. Do you know the Flight of the Conchords?
Of course I know the Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just
He
curious.
maybe did. Yeah, maybe he did,
so
maybe he
it's
didn't.
the New Zealand.
No, he maybe did.
Hey, Brit. So yeah, that was the connection that I made. I'm a big fan of them, and so thus all of New Zealand and anything they produce.
I'm the hip hopopotamus. My lyrics are bottomless.
Oh, you really do know them.
Yeah. I love the
Okay,
Flight of the
great.
Conchords. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've had a fun time watching that show and listening to their music frequently. All right.
Hey, Travis. Thank you for exposing yourself to me.
Oh, Matt, thank you for exposing yourself to me. And hey, listeners, if any of you would like to expose yourselves to us, do so by reaching out to us on email at exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com or finding us on the Facebook page, Exposing Ourselves, and let us know what you think of our ratings. Did you like Honor Among Thieves better than we did? Do you like Sufjan Stevens
Sufjan Stevens.
better than I did? Let us know, and we will take your comments under advisement. And Matt, I will talk to you next week.